Hey, this is Ketch from Old Crow Medicine Show, and you're listening to Walking the Floor.
I'm walking the floor over you.
Walking the floor.
I'm walking the floor. Walking the floor over you.
Hola, senors and senoritas. This is Chris Shiflett, and you are listening to episode number 167 of your favorite podcast, Walking the Floor. We have a particularly good one today. I got to tell you, I've been sliding in summer over here at Walking the Floor World Headquarters and generally neglecting and shirking my podcast duties. But we're back. I don't know, man. I had a really productive couple months there and really like working hard. And then my kids quit doing school and summer started. And I just said, fuck it, let's go to the beach. Couldn't help it. I've also been kind of neglecting my live stream stuff. But let's be honest, the live streams are kind of boring. Admit it. You were getting a little sick of them. I did like 300 in a week. And I could feel it. It was time to walk away. I kind of miss them. Kinda. I mean, I don't really miss them the way I miss, like, being in a room full of sweaty people at a gig, but I don't see that coming back anytime real soon, so might just do a little impromptu live streaming here again soon, because I guess that's all we got, people. Hey, I gotta tell you a nice story. It's been an interesting times the last month or so. A lot of civil unrest out there, a lot of protest, a lot of emotions running high, and I kind of tend to be a bit of a cynical person, a kind of a glass half empty kind of person, which I know it's hard to believe, but it's just kind of how I'm wired. And so the other day, I'm walking down the street from my studio to get some lunch, and my studio is right next to like a garbage truck depot or something. It's like where the garbage trucks come and go all day. So there's big garbage trucks rumbling down the street. And I'm walking down the street to get lunch, and I hear the rumble coming up next to me, and it's a big-ass garbage truck, and pulls up right next to me, and the guy driving the truck leans out his window and goes, "Hey!" And of course, instantly in my mind, I'm like, oh man, what did I do to this guy? What's he gonna ring me up about? What did I do wrong? And he says, "Hey, have you heard about that new LA County ordinance?" I was like, no. And he said, "Everybody is required to have a great day." And I just burst out laughing, man. I was like, fuck yeah, thank you, sir. And he drove off, and I walked off to go get lunch, and I was already having a pretty good day, but that launched me into a great day, and I've been having a great day ever since. Sometimes you just need that little uplift to restore your faith in humanity when you're feeling a little low. And that was it for me. So I hope everybody out there follows that ordinance and has a great day listening to this podcast or whatever else it is you're out there doing. All right, let's pay the bills. Did you know that nobody makes the best gear from the best brands more affordable than Zounds.com? You never have to pay full price all at once when you buy from Zounds if you use their exclusive payment plans, and Zounds never charges interest. Never, ever, ever. Everybody else will read their fine print, but not at Zounds. So get on over to Zounds.com today, kids, and get your guitar strings and your amps and your keyboards and your MIDI controllers and go make something cool. Let's get to the interview. So I did this interview with Ketch Secor from Old Crow Medicine Show back on April 23rd, which seems like a very long time ago now. You know Old Crow Medicine Show, of course, from their monster hit Wagon Wheel from a few years back. But they've released a grip of great records since then. And throughout the shutdown of the touring side of the music biz, they've actually managed to be pretty darn active. First releasing a song to raise money for tornado victims in Nashville, and more recently the tune Pray for America, which you are listening to right now. In addition to that, Ketch has also been hosting a weekly live stream show on YouTube called Hartland Hootenanny, which is absolutely fantastic. I'll post a link to that on my website. Not only did Ketch tune me up on the difference between bluegrass and old-time music, but he gave me an amazing history lesson of the Shiflett family name, which he knows all too well from his childhood spent in small-town Virginia. Seriously, hearing him talk about getting beaten up in junior high by my distant cousin, Daryl Shiflett, has to be one of the all-time greatest moments of my podcasting career. So without further ado, this is Ketch Secor from Old Crow Medicine Show on Walking the Floor. It's working.
Hey,
How are you?
I didn't know I was going to get to see your face.
Oh yeah, man, this is the whole deal.
Oh, great.
Well, why do you have such a beautiful, soft light about you?
Well, it's because I'm so hopeful and optimistic.
Yes. Oh, good. Well, somebody needs to be Jesus.
Are you feeling good?
I'm actually feeling good. It's funny. I was thinking about that this morning. I feel like there's been some phases already in this lockdown thing, at least for me and my family, where like at first you're just kind of like, huh, what's going on? And then we're all on each other's nerves and arguing a lot, and it's just kind of a bad vibe. And then all of a sudden I feel like we're kind of like, yeah, all right. I think a lot of that has had to do with the fact that I've had to really back the fuck off. You know? Okay, I don't know what your home situation is. I have 3 boys and I'm married, and I spent the first few weeks of this thing trying to tune everybody up to live more efficiently. You know, I don't know.
That sounds pretty good, man. I have 2 kids and I'm divorced, and that's pretty new. And I have half custody, and so I'm like super isolated with kids every other week. So without a lot of friends, without family in town, and so and that's not unusual for me. But running the homeschool and being a stay-at-home homeschooling dad, like rocking the curriculum, has really been a challenge.
Yeah, man, the homeschool thing is wild because I don't know about you, but like my kids are old enough that they're way past like stuff that I can really even help them with. I was a terrible student. I dropped out of high school and didn't really go much past junior high. So my skills are limited in that regard. And it's also different now anyway. So I feel like we're just sort of like, it's not so much that we're homeschooling. We're like keeping everybody, like making sure you start on time and end on time and get your work done. But
how old is your youngest?
My youngest is 12. My oldest is 16. And I also have a 13-year-old in the middle there. How about you?
I've got a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old.
Okay.
So I'm in a real physical situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Recess is bike riding. Today is William Shakespeare's birthday, so we talked a lot about Shakespeare. And I've got my older daughter doing some writing so that eventually she'll be able to memorize a sonnet. When I was in maybe the 2nd or 3rd grade, I could recite a poem. And that was and I wish I learned to recite more, because I'll never forget the poem that I learned to recite in the 3rd grade. Right.
Yeah, it's wild how that stuff it's like really sticks in your head. Enjoy the time that you have with your kids at that age, because there is a point where you stop being their primary influence. And so like if I went to my 16-year-old now and I was like, hey, we're going to memorize a sonnet, he'd be like, get the fuck out of my room, Dad. Well, I've been starting most of these interviews that I've been doing remotely, since this whole thing started, by just kind of asking people what they've been doing to keep busy and not lose their minds and everything. And we just talked about, obviously, a big part of what you're doing. But I also know you've been doing those Hartland Hootenannies that I love.
Oh, great. Thanks.
They're so good. I mean, obviously you have a deep appreciation for, old school country and bluegrass and all that. But it's so reminiscent of like, when I watch old footage of the Grand Ole Opry or something on YouTube or even like Marty Stewart's TV show that he had. It's just got that feel, and it's just you sort of keeping it trucking, man. I love it. I'm really curious, like how you decided to do that, or how you put that together, because it's not just like it's not just a live stream exactly. There's actually like some kind of like creative production value going on in it.
It's been so fun writing it and having the quarantine era. The way I responded to it is to write and sing and jump around and try and get up. And so being creative in this time, I think for me it's a no-brainer. I just want to do it. And then I'm so pleased to work in a space that has all pressure removed. Like right. No one makes money doing it anymore. There's no money in art.
right. Yeah.
Oh, it's like fucking Shakespeare times.
Yeah, it's officially gone. Yeah. We've been tinkering on the edge of completely removing the money side of this for a long time, and now it's just zapped.
Now that it's no longer commodified, we can do whatever we feel in our hearts is right. And so I feel like doing TV. I always wanted to do TV. And I never could because you have to get a contract to do TV. You got to get a channel and you got to get money and you got to get in People magazine, but not for my kind of TV. And so I'm just doing it and it's fun and I'm really enjoying writing it and thinking about what I want to sing and say and how to be silly.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I was really struck by, and I've never seen you perform live, so this is like sort of my first experience of seeing you play live, even though it's through my computer. But I was really struck by the way as a performer, and I think this is a really hard balance. Like you're high energy, and it's boom, boom, boom. It's like in your face, but at the same time, you seem so comfortable in your skin. It's like relaxed and up at the same time.
Well, Chris, I'm a busker. I came from the street corner. So I've already been as humble as one can be. And the street corner is sort of the development of a psyche of, how to figure out what your mask is. I don't know that everybody that sings or writes or gets on the stage wears a mask, but I know I do. But my mask feels like me. It doesn't feel like something separate. It's something in me that just comes in, and it's been the same forever. It's like I do it. I mean, I feel 11 years old professionally and eternally, and it's a great feeling. And I see it in my kids. I see it in others too. And I kind of wish we could all feel this effervescence of our own youth in our, middle age, like I do. I'd love to be able to bottle that and give it away, but I can't. So I'll just embody it. And if you pick up on it, anybody watching or listening, catch it and then throw it up in the air for somebody else to catch.
I'll tell you something funny, man. Like the routine in my house, even, before the pandemic, I always wake up earlier and I'm usually a couple of cups of coffee into my day before I go wake my kids up and make them breakfast and everything. And then my wife comes down and we're all kind of down there together. But by the time we're all at the table, I've been up for a while and I'm running, you know what I mean? And it drives my family insane. And they actually have a name for it. So that's sort of my morning persona. They go, oh, come on, dude. Enough with the crazy Larry.
Oh, they call you Crazy Larry.
Like, all right, can you just put a cap on the Crazy Larry? I just woke up. Can I just eat my eggs, Dad? Jesus.
That reminds me of a character in Pee Wee Herman's movie, Pee Wee's Big Adventure, Amazing Larry. He's one of the voices trying to chime in about where Pee Wee's bike might be. I've been thinking so much about Pee Wee Herman and Pee Wee's Playhouse, and then also shows like Howdy Doody and the ways that like 50s technology doesn't have a lot of camera angles anyway, so you just sort of have to keep moving.
Yeah. Well, I love that on your show, how you grab your baseball bat and just move and I'm really curious, like what's happening that we're not seeing? Like, what is your production setup there? And you talked about how you write the show out. So do you have is it just you, or do you have your kids flipping cue cards for you? Like, what are we not seeing that sort of keeps it? You can't just memorize all that. I'm sure it's a lot.
What you're not seeing is that I'm doing a lot of it during homeschool while my kids are doing their workbooks. And I'm like, come on, just give me 14 minutes. My kingdom for 14 minutes.
Right.
They're right there, and then they always finish their shit so quick, and then they want me to check their work. Yeah. But I'm trying to write a story or a joke, or I'm trying to think about, what do I feel like singing? And then when it comes down to the actual production of it, I'm really trying to represent quarantine, but I don't have any technical know-how to do anything like that. So I've got my bass player Morgan, who's and my occasional drummer banjo player Robert, and the three of us are doing that.
Ah, okay. Are they there with you, kind of helping?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay.
It's just like surprising how you find that you have what you need in the times that you need what you think that was missing. Anyway, that's confusing. But these guys, it's like they always wanted to make a TV show, and I never even thought to ask them. And they never thought to tell me, because we were never going to make a TV show. We were going to go on the road. I mean, I've already lost 23 dates that I was supposed to be in Texas tonight.
Right. Yeah.
I get on tour buses and I ride around the country, and like you, I've been doing this for a long time. And so to get to deviate from it creatively, I mean, that's what, I've got questions for you too, because you seem to have been able to so beautifully diversify the kind of work that you get to do as a performer.
Well, it's interesting because kind of what you said a minute ago, it's like in these times you figure out that you have all the stuff that you need to kind of get the job done that you're trying to do. Like, this is a great time, has been a great time these last few weeks for me. I'm at my studio right now, nobody's here. So I feel like it's still respecting the isolation. But it's like a good time I'll just go into my room and just go through like pedals and stuff that I'm like, somebody gave me this 6 years ago. It's been sitting on a shelf ever since. Like, what does this do? You know what I mean? It's a lot of that sort of thing. Like, how does Beat Detective work on Pro Tools? Just trying to figure out, spend a little time, because all of a sudden that's all we have is time.
Isn't it beautiful to have all that time?
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully, I can't help but think that's like some really good art is going to come out of all this. I mean, I don't know about you. I've been writing a ton of songs and just kind of just getting to it every day just to keep that music brain going.
Yeah, I think I think there could be a real flourishing of the arts after this. And I'm already looking ahead to when the traffic returns and the buzz of activity begins again, and I sort of don't want it to. I mean, I'm already kind of sad. My state, Tennessee, is lifting its restrictions now. I don't really understand that how restrictions or non-restrictions could represent a political alliance or party.
Right.
But I live in a staunchly conservative red state. And apparently it's a real red state decision to open up your economy and stop the quarantine. So we're stopping in every place except for the big cities. Right. But I live in downtown Nashville.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting. I've been reading a bunch about that in the paper, and it's going to be interesting to see some of these states that reopen, like to what extent the citizenry goes along with that. Some people will, some people won't. I would think probably people like you will continue to self-quarantine or isolate to the best of their ability. It's hard to imagine that everything's just going to just kick back in, It's
already so natural it's just like it's like time off, Musicians are already so marginally engaged in the economy. I mean, we're like fishermen, and we go out when the schools are running. And if they're not running, we're not out there. We're home, or we're tinkering with our boats, or like you say, you're getting out your old pedals. And I'm revisiting some 11-year-old fantasy of having a Pee Wee Herman style playhouse that I can go to and drink apple juice.
Man, I hope that you continue to do that even post-pandemic, because I think it's great what you're doing with that show.
Thank you.
It's interesting in sort of just researching you and your band to get ready for this. I didn't realize that you guys lived in Nashville. Or I don't know if all your band lives in Nashville, but I didn't realize you lived in Nashville. For some reason, I always had it in my head that you were like from North Carolina or something. I don't even know why. But like, how long has the band been based out of there?
Well, we moved here from North Carolina, and we moved here about maybe 19 years ago, 20 years ago.
So you've been there a long time. You've been there through a lot of changes in that town.
Totally. And bookended by, I moved here just after a big tornado hit down, and 22 years later, a big tornado just hit down again, just about 35 days ago.
Right.
Super Tuesday tornado. And just down the block from my house, I'm 2 blocks away from standing piles of rubble, broken glass, demoed houses, cleanup work that has had to stop because of the global pandemic.
Right.
A really fascinating time to be in Nashville. It was almost like we had a head start on getting prepared as a community for social distancing and the craziness of the economy tanking. I think we're going to be better off in Nashville because we started this whole thing out by rebuilding our city for 14 days until the quarantines were imposed.
So the quarantine was just a couple of weeks after the tornado.
Yeah.
That's so wild. How did you guys when did you record? I'm just curious about the timeline, because I know you did that song Nashville Rising, about the sort of, it's a, I don't know what the economics of it are, but it's like raising money for rebuilding Nashville, right? How did you get that together so quick? Between those 2 points.
It was this funny little gap, and we were supposed to go on the road. We were supposed to go to Europe, and everyone was so scared. Oh my God, we were all just nail biting, watching the news to see what Trump was going to do next, and where's he going to? And then we were playing the O2. We're opening up for Darius Rucker of all things, and it was a big production thing. So it was like at the arena in Dublin, and they wouldn't cancel. And they didn't cancel. And so we had to pull out at, 4 hours before the plane left. And in that time, the tornado had just happened. There was still rubble everywhere. And so it was sort of like before, it was when Tennessee heard you're supposed to stay 30 feet apart and not yet 6, that we went into a studio and recorded, I don't know. And then like 2 days later, and I remember Molly Tuttle said as she was walking out, that's probably the last I'm going to be around anybody for a long time.
Yeah.
So I feel like I don't know if you guys have been in the studio or if you've been making home recordings, but I find that the standards, the same standards don't apply anymore. Like I filmed a little video, and I'm going to put it out on my TV show on Saturday. And there's a 4-day turnaround with my little video with a song that I wrote in quarantine. And I just feel the excitement of like the 45 era when you could make an album every 8 weeks.
Right. Yeah. Like when you cut the song and they burned a little, whatever it was, a little acetate, and took it down to the radio station that night.
Here it is, man.
Right. It's funny. I'm reading that Goralnik book on Sam Phillips right now, and I'm right at that part.
I love that book. That book.
It's so good.
All his works. And, he teaches at Vanderbilt. Peter Goralnik.
Oh, really?
Town periodically. He's like a low residency English and music teacher there.
Oh yeah, I'm right at the part where he is discovering Elvis, and it's like that moment. They literally cut whatever it was. That's All Right, Mama. I think was maybe the track, and he burned it and took it down to the radio station. It was like a hit, and then they're like, "Oh fuck, this doesn't exist anywhere. We got to print this up real quick."
I was just talking about that because Cowboy Jack Clement engineered that session.
Oh wow!
And he was one of the guys that was there when it finally dawned on Jerry Lee to do something different than sing those torch ballads that he thought he was supposed to sing, like Jim Austen type songs.
Right.
And you see that across the board with early rock and rollers. They all arrive at the studio with their properest attire and ready to sing what they perceive to be hit music. And the hit music is the stuff from just inside. So amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it really is kind of amazing. I've read this before about Elvis in particular, that he really, like, his heroes were Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin and people like that. That's sort of what he, obviously he listened to a lot of country and blues, whatever, as well. But those were the guys that were like what he aspired to be. So it sort of makes sense of the latter part of his career,
Yeah, yeah. And of course, I just wish he'd keep singing rock and roll and pushing at the rock and roll.
Right.
But Jerry Lee Lewis, goes country. Elvis goes Vegas, and what does Bob Dylan do? I mean, goes Christian. It's amazing.
Right. You mentioned Bob Dylan. I mean, you guys obviously famously collaborated in a sense on the Wagon Wheel tune. That was a big hit. But you also did that tribute to Blonde on Blonde. Like, have you, through the sort of commercial success of that, have you had any interaction with Dylan himself?
Never met him.
Any feedback, anything? Any like, good job on Wagon Wheel, boys. Thank you.
One time, one of our guys from our band was out in LA for the Grammy Awards because we had just become really good friends with the Mumford boys. So right. Mumford was about to do this big mashup on the Grammys, and so my pal from Old Crow was there, and Bob was there, and they had a funny encounter backstage, and Bob said to my friend, "Are you an Old Crow? You guys are killing it."
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of good enough for me. Like, I don't need any.
Yeah, it is. That is like the best stamp of approval. Yeah. Are you kidding? I mean, it's wild. Like listening to the original rough demo of that song. It really, like, I can hear how you took that and added to it and everything. But as in a songwriting sense, you added a lot to that idea. You know what I mean? There was like, it was nowhere near realized to the way that you guys did it.
Yeah. I mean, but the magic was there, right? Because the magic chorus is so infectious. And so it just needed, a good story. And, that the kind of story that, like, I think a lot about Neil Young's song Sugar Mountain, which is a song that he wrote when he was a teenager. And do you ever spend any time with that one? Do you love that? Oh, to live on Sugar Mountain.
I don't think I know that one.
Oh, it's a beauty. And it captures this real innocent kind of feeling. It was a big early hit for him. And I feel like when you're young, you can do things with songs, just like Jerry Lee Lewis going into, a whole lot of shaking going on. Where does that stuff come from?
Right. Youthful exuberance. Do you need to get that phone?
I don't know. That's my landline. So I just got it installed when I got my new smartphone. I got a smartphone and a landline on the same day. It was so exciting. I've been without a smartphone for, the past 18 years that I could have had one, or whatever it is, 12 years or whatnot. Right. And now I'm so excited it's like I just started smoking, and I love it. But I didn't do it before, so I can do it all I want.
Right. Well, you got to have that smartphone for your live streams, man. Jesus, come on. That is funny. There was a moment I don't remember if it was the last one or the first one from one of your hootenannies, where you have like this beautiful old typewriter, and you took that off the table and put your MacBook on there. There was something symbolic in that,
Yeah, it's funny to get high tech again. I can't remember how I got onto that subject though. We were talking about Bob or.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, we were talking about that Neil Young song. And
I was saying.
I think that was either Neil Young or Jerry Lee Lewis calling on the home phone landline to jump into the conversation.
Sorry, I'm on with Chris Shiflett. Can I tell you something? Where I come from in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia.
Yes. Thank you. I know where you're going. I know exactly where you're going with this.
You are your name is a famous name in my community. Right. Your name is the most, it is a very powerful name. You're not from Virginia, are you?
No, but I'm so excited for you to bring this up because nobody knows this, but like my family, I guess. But we grew up on the West Coast. My dad moved out, or my dad was born in California, but his parents were from Missouri, and somewhere down the line, I don't know who, a great-grandpa, great-great-grand, whatever, somebody came from Virginia, right? And Virginia, as you said, is the only place where there's a lot of people with my name, and you really don't meet people named Shiflett often. And I remember growing up, we lived in Maryland here and there for a time because my dad was a teacher out at University of Maryland, like when I was really young. And so he somehow he just knew the family lore, and the family lore was that there was this place called Shiflett Hollow in the hills of Virginia, and that the Shiflett family descended from Hessian mercenaries who were hired by the British to fight in the Revolutionary War and then like deserted to the hills at the end of the war. That since has been debunked by the internet. That's not true. It might be a little bit true, but it's not. That's not where because there's like Shiflett, records from like the 1620s or some shit. There's a really great Shiflett family genealogy website that I discovered years ago that's got like just tons of incredible info on it. It's like one of those websites, like most of the writing on there is sort of from the perspective of like, and this is always sort of a tell, like it'll refer to the Civil War as the War of Northern Aggression. And that's that sort of thing. I joined a Shiflet Family group on Facebook years ago, and it's so I see all this stuff that just Shiflets from all over post, and it leans a little Trumpy, but it's whatever. That's neither here nor there. But it's interesting because there was the stuff that we knew from my dad and whatever about Virginia, and he actually went and found Shiflet Hollow, and there's not much left there, I think, and this was in the 70s, so there's I think even less now, but then years ago, when I first joined Foo Fighters, I was on tour and I found in a record store a band called, you might be familiar with them, Carl Shiflett. You know who? Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, check it out. So I got that and I was like, what the fuck? There's another Shiflett out there and they're musicians. And then his son is in the band, play bass. His name, no joke, Chris Shiflett.
Chris Shiflett, of course. Yeah.
I now am friends with Chris Shiflett. And it's funny when we met because they're from Texas, and we have no immediate family connection that we're aware of or anything. But like his version of the family tale is the exact same thing. So it's, we got to be related.
Oh, did he have the Hessian thing?
I don't know if he knew the Hessian thing, but I debunked that myself on the Shiflett Family genealogy website. Well,
let me tell you my Shiflet story because it all begins with a boy named Daryl. Daryl Shiflett was the bully in my town, and Daryl was.
I love it already.
Daryl, he'll talk. People in the valley talk like this. So Daryl Shiflett talk like this. There's a wateriness. Like instead of Washington, you say Washington. Instead of roof, you say roof. Well, when you get to the valley, you talk a little bit more like that. So that's how Daryl would talk like that. And Daryl had like really long, stringy wrestler hair. And in the 7th grade, Daryl basically beat anybody up that he could.
I love Daryl.
And I was one of the kids that Daryl faced. Daryl was like there was a group of other guys which had a number of other Shiflets in it that they called the Four Horsemen. And anyway, the Shiflet identity, like I lived in a town that was almost all white, a small black population, and an increasing Latino population, because where I lived in is a town of a lot of poultry processing. Right. And the Shiflets were considered, so anyway, it wasn't so much race lines as it was class lines. And the Shiflets really, really represented the poor class. And I lived right by the trailer park, and it was full of Shiflets, and they were all related. And so even like the sense of Shifletness, to be a Shiflet was low on the totem pole of lunch line politics and what table you sat at in the cafetorium. Daryl Shiflett and all the other Shiflets sat on the outer periphery, and they were rednecks. And then there were popular girls, and we were all in our cliques. But the Shiflets, upward mobility for a Shiflet was really hard. Right. I'll tell you a funny. It's so interesting to hear this because I met a guy from Virginia years ago, and I told him my last name, and he instantly launched into Shiflet jokes. And it was like with the same, how many Shiflets did it take to screw in a light bulb? It was like Pollock jokes, or it was like the exact same thing, and just started laughing in my face. I remember being like, "What the fuck?" Yeah, I mean, I told Shiflet jokes. We both feared. And here's the interesting thing: I was told when I was probably in the 8th grade that Shiflet was an Italian name, that it came from Schifletti. Interesting. And what I'm convinced of as I think about why someone said the Shiflets were Italian is I lived in like I say, the western part of Virginia was very white, but there were degrees of whiteness.
Right.
And, like the whole mythology of who is white and who is not white among white people,
Right.
are the Irish whites. I think I lived in a town that just was so not diverse that there was a willingness to create categories of whiteness.
Sure.
Influenced by being Italian, that put them in another category of whiteness.
Yeah, they're just a little more swarthy,
Yeah, right.
a little too Catholic for the nativist sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because the Germans where I lived is all Germans.
Oh, wow.
And if you were poor in a German, you were a barger or a burger or a weaver or a puffenbarger. So anyway, there were these two really different sets of the hillbillies, basically.
Right.
And me as a non-hillbilly living in a hillbilly town, it was fascinating. I mean, I think Daryl Shiflett kicking my ass was one of the best things that ever happened.
Is that the moment you discovered bluegrass?
I mean,
as you heard a banjo in the distance, as he was just like doink, doink, doink.
Here's the thing: he called me poor little rich boy, poor little rich boy, poor little rich boy. And then poor little rich boy was awesome. It was so it hurt, and I was like, no, I'm not. And I remember my answer: no, Daryl, we're middle class.
Well, I was going to get to that, but what was your family background? Why was your family there?
They were teachers.
I was going to guess you have an academic sensibility. I was going to go with that, and I don't mean that. I don't mean that negatively at all.
No.
Yeah, my dad was a teacher. My wife's stepfather is also a teacher, and so I get it.
Well, you are definitely a different Shiflett than the ones that I was taught to fear. And so I know that, and I hear you when you say that when you're on the Shiflett family website, it skews a little Trump. I think that's one of the things about lineage and family is that we can skew every which way and still be family. And if we could just find a way to express kinship, love within families, I mean, think what we could do in the world. Because my relations, they go every which way too.
Well, I read after John Prine passed away recently, I read, I think there was a big write-up in Rolling Stone or something, and there was a quote of his in there where he was talking about when he grew up, how nobody cared if you were a Democrat or a Republican. It mostly just didn't come up. Something to that effect, And that I remember that being a kid. It's so interesting I don't know how old you are, but over the course of our lifetimes, how that sort of fault line and the polarization in American society right now of oh, you're one of those. So now we cannot talk about anything because you're one of those. It drives me crazy. And I'm mostly critical about my own side with that. I come from, fucking stereotypical West Coast liberal or progressive, whatever you want to call me. And it makes me, I probably spend more time being critical of my own side of the aisle because I don't see a difference in that. What am I trying to say? People on my side of the aisle like to wag their finger at what they call ignorance and delusion and don't see it in themselves. And it drives me crazy where I look at, we're talking about reopening to certain states kind of along party lines. And there were a lot of protests the other day of people going, hey, you can't close America or whatever. And as much as I disagree with that across the board, I think it's reckless and dangerous for us all. At the same time, I go, those are American citizens. Those are our brothers and sisters, and they're suffering, and their government's not taking care of them. And even if they support the government that's not taking care of them, I still feel for them. It's like you're sort of you're punching down at that point. You should be punching up.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, we're still struggling with these same class divisions and lines and all of this, already debunked mythologies about who we all are and where we came from, as evidenced by Daryl Shiflett. I could put as a town, Shifletts were one kind of people, and that same kind of thinking is to say, if you're a Republican, you're one way, and if you're a liberal, you're the other way. And that's just not how it is. I mean, life's a lot more complicated than one river or the other river, or one, ice water or a glass of milk. It just there's everything in between.
You know, one of the things that I read a lot about you guys is it's gets referenced a lot. Like you guys playing like when you first started out, like bluegrass, old time music, but with like a punk rock energy to it. And I'm wondering about what you grew up listening to. Like, what were your influences? Did you come out of a punk rock background or rock and roll background? Where did that spirit come from?
Right at the same time as Daryl Schiflett was threatening me in the bathroom of Thomas Harrison Middle School, I went to the local record store and I got a Bad Brains cassette.
No shit.
I thought that was pretty badass, and then we stayed up till midnight when Nevermind came out, and we waited in a line to buy it. And of course, I was listening to a lot of Bob Dylan and then country music too, but definitely, and like the Pixies and the Breeders and all that stuff I felt teenage angst and I wanted to rock out. My first instrument was the electric guitar. I had a garage band. I made a cassette with a bunch of bad word songs on it that got me in trouble at school in the 8th grade.
Great.
We had a song about fellatio. I mean, it was fucking
right. Well, when did you discover bluegrass?
It was like within this. It was like after the 9th grade. So the 8th grade and the 9th grade, I was just moshing and headbanging, and then all of a sudden I could play the banjo, and they were one and the same to me.
Did you go to like bluegrass camps and stuff? Like a lot of folks that I've interviewed that have come out of the bluegrass world, like seem to all have this shared experience of going to bluegrass camps and bluegrass jams and the sort of communal, there seems to be a communal thing that happens in that scene that I don't know happens really anywhere else.
Yeah. That's a lot of bluegrass kids have that experience. For me, because I played old time music, I was like sort of against bluegrass music. I thought bluegrass was super square.
Okay, wait, for people listening that don't understand the distinction, and I got to be honest, I don't 100% understand the distinction. What is the distinction there?
Basically, old time is everything from the 30s and back, and bluegrass is everything from the late 30s and up.
So like from Bill Monroe forward.
Yeah, Bill Monroe forward.
So Carter Family is old time.
It's old time music.
Okay.
Yeah. And the string band sounds of old time music from the 20s and 30s, they're like they drive and nobody steps out. There's no soloing, and it's very unrelated to jazz or pop music that has and all this percolation. Things don't percolate; they drive like a runaway train.
And what's the instrumentation? Like what is it that's driving it?
Fiddle and banjo, sometimes guitar. Largely, they're records of just fiddle playing. And now, when you finish the Gralnick book, you might like the book by Grail Marcus, what's it called, The Old Weird America or something. In which
I think I've heard of that.
Yeah. That thing gets quoted a lot. There's just something about the music from before the Second World War that defies categorization, and it has a lot to do with race, and it has a lot to do with regionality. And these musics are really pure American sounds that then, through the commodification of record making, get filtered out and strained and segmented and pushed in different places. But when you go to the headwaters, the shit that's pure and it can be really outrageous. It can be really bizarre, like eefing. Have you ever heard of this? Eefing is like almost a hyperventilative singing style that was popular in Mississippi, or cane flutes, for example, things that have old world relations that reach some cultural zenith in the 1920s, right at the time when field recordists and even some commercial recordists can go capture it. People like Ralph Peer, who can capture the sounds right as they have reached, and then they change.
Yeah, what's that? There's that great anthology. What is it called? Anthology of American Music. Is that the one I'm thinking of? That's a lot of that. Yeah, with all the like sort of front porch recording stuff. Where I don't remember exactly what you just said, but spooky. It's really spooky.
It can be really spooky. And for me, I felt like if I don't learn to play, I felt this need to preserve it and I translated all that punk rock, I'm not going to let the man hold me down kind of attitude. I put that into, I'm not going to let these bluegrassers fuck the purity of my old time music.
Right.
I'm not going to let the radio keep it felt very much like the man and, underclasses and,
it's amazing. I've never heard anybody else refer to bluegrass as like we're not going to let that modern sound contaminate. That's amazing in itself. I mean, was there a point where you then dove into the bluegrass side of things, or am I totally misreading a lot of your music and hearing that as?
Oh no, I turned 27 and I didn't need to feel that way anymore.
Right.
Like I got to Nashville and we didn't play any of our own songs, almost like a rule. We played square dance music from the 19th century. That's it. That was the jam. Right. And then we started playing jug band music from Memphis in the 20s, like really bawdy shit, like songs about coke and needles and murder and all beautiful, bawdy, mean stuff, like dead hookers and razor blades cutting throats and shit.
The original gangster rap, yes.
Yeah, totally. We started doing that, but what we weren't doing was singing our hit song Wagon Wheel. I didn't sing that in Nashville. I played the square dance music. And then Nashville said to me, hey, if you want to do it here, you got to be an original songwriter. And I'm like, well, I already wrote a bunch of songs. We just don't play them because we're not that kind of band. And so that's when we became that kind of band. And in becoming a band that played original material, we embraced all kinds of things like bluegrass and rock and roll and, the Grateful Dead.
Right. Yeah, because your sound now is just like it's a mishmash of a lot of stuff, seems to me.
Yeah.
I'm curious with your songwriting, because I went through a period years ago in my own songwriting where when I was really first diving into like classic country and Buck Owens and the West Coast sound, all that stuff, I've sort of made a concerted effort. I wanted to write like that. It wasn't native to me. It didn't come out of me. And I wanted to sort of, I don't know, jam it in there. And it was a real struggle. It was strange. I wrote a lot of bad songs. And I realized eventually that what I was doing was trying to write in their language. And it was one thing, the music side of it was one thing, but it was like the lyrics were the hardest part for me because I was trying to write like I was a guy from 1958 instead of what I am. And when I finally got comfortable with that, it really changed my songwriting. Like, how do you, because a lot of the song, like your original songs, there's stuff that like you're singing about you and now and it's current, but it's like framed in a sort of a vintage aesthetic. You know what I mean? Did you struggle with that in your own writing, or is that just how it came out of you?
It makes me think about how Daryl Schiflett called me a poor little rich boy and how astute he was, because he was right. It didn't matter how much money my folks had. I was not a country boy. Like Daryl. Right. I wasn't living a country life. My dad wasn't a plumber. Dad, and our kinship ties didn't go into the same place. We were from Toledo. We were like we definitely weren't country folk. Right. So I found that the way that I decided, I learned to play the banjo in New Hampshire at boarding school, where I wrote Wagon Wheel. So I'm this prep school boy listening to Pete Seeger, wanting to be a, rabble-rousing proletariat, banjo guy, like Woody Guthrie, and sure. Just worshiping that, lead belly, and just thinking like, oh, what if there was a folk revival right now? Wouldn't that be cool? And then learning all these civil rights era songs and freedom ride songs and that kind of stuff, which I was doing when I was a teenager. That sort of set me down the road of country music. And so in order to like how to write like it, I went and lived like it. And for the first 3 years of the band's life, before we came to Nashville, we lived basically we had a tobacco field behind our house. We made corn whiskey. We, lived in this funny community of mostly old people because the kids had all moved away. This is in the late 90s. And that was a time living in North Carolina when, we planted by the lunar signs and got really into the kind of crossroads of music and agriculture. Played music at a lot of farmers markets and, sort of like a back to the land kind of thing.
And isn't there a story about Doc Watson actually hearing you like busking on a corner and inviting you to play? I'll tell you something I didn't realize until yesterday, because I've never been to Merle Fest or played Merle Fest or anything. I've heard of that for years. I thought that was a Merle Haggard tribute festival. I just assumed that based on the name. I didn't realize that was a Doc Watson festival. But tell me that story. That must have been like, one of your heroes giving his stamp of approval.
It was pretty amazing.
Or were you like, fuck you, Bluegrass guy, you're destroying my pure mountain music?
No, because Doc really is an old time musician. Right. What an amazing guy. And I mean, I haven't spent a whole lot of time listening to Doc. I was more into the other thing that was happening is that we were playing with a lot of amateur musicians who just never, like they never had opportunities, and they couldn't really play that well anymore. But we would do these CB radio shows, like we would play and they would listen across the state line on the CBs. And it was more about being in with there was a lot like up there, the Shiflets are the Presnells and the Trivets. Anyway, same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Doc Watson, we were busking in front of a place that he himself had busked.
Wow.
Because Doc Watson, one of the things that I always love about thinking about him as a busker is that he had to find a place that would let him use their power cord, because he always carried an amp with him, because in the 1950s, this blind 20-year-old street singer, was playing rock and roll. He wanted to play like Merle Travis and do that chicken picking type stuff.
Right.
He wanted to sound
busking, but asking to use some a power strip. That's like involved. Yeah. I tried. I'm a little fascinated with busking myself. I haven't done much of it, but I have done it a couple times in recent years, just down on like Broadway in Nashville, just on a lark, and it's so fun. But I would be curious, like what sort of performance lessons you learned in your busking years, because what I figured out real quick is nobody will make eye contact with you because they don't want to have to give you $1.
Yeah, that's so true. And eye contact is the way in. And, the homeless guy at the red light knows the same thing. That's why you got to wave so much and keep smiling, because that's how you're going to get that $1 and sell that newspaper. You're not going to get it without eye contact. People don't accidentally throw you money. They do it very deliberately because they've made a choice. One of the first great lessons that I had in busking was get out of the States, man. Go to Canada where they have a $2 coin and double your profits.
Oh, wow. God, that is serious busking tip.
Man, when you throw coins, because the coin gives the audience a little piece of the music. Like there's a rhythm bit. Tink.
Right.
That's the fun. It's like, tink, I'm generous. Tink, I support the arts.
Right. That's interesting. I mean, how did those kind of like the hard Scrabble lessons you guys learned coming up, how do you then, use that in an environment like you're making an album with Dave Cobb at RCA Studio A?
I think what you do there, Chris, is you channel all the frenetic energy of what it is to be a performer on a street corner, where you're trying to make people stop and pay attention to you, even though they don't give a shit about you, and they're actually heading somewhere else right now. And what can you do to arrest them, essentially?
Right.
And so finding, and to me, that's just energy. It's like, how crazy can you get? Or it can be a tenderness too, because like you can channel that same energy and do it in a more refined way.
But there's also like when you go in and record. I mean, I don't know how you guys did. I made a couple albums with Cobb myself, and we record most of it live. And you got to be kind of on your game. Like that's a different way. That's not the normal way records get made these days, when they're sort of pieced together. Is that the approach that you guys had in there? Yeah,
it was all live, but Dave didn't have us doing a whole lot of tunes that were like, he had us making, and because that might be 25% of what I write, but I like slow songs too, and I want to sing about heartache, and it's sometimes heartache. I mean, it's a nice pace to sing about heartache at, or but they can't all be songs about cocaine and whiskey.
But there, a lot of them are.
Yeah.
Which I was like, I think this guy's trying to tell us something. He likes the cocaine. All right, man. Well, I have taken up a lot of your time today, and I appreciate it. And I am very much looking forward to your epic Daryl Shiflett concept record that's going to be coming probably by the end of this year, I'm guessing.
Oh, man. You know, what was so great, Chris, is that he spelled it with a Y.
Spelled Shiflett with a Y.
No, Daryl with a Y.
Oh, Daryl. Okay. I was going to say, because there are actually many, many different Shiflett spellings as well.
Yeah.
We're one F, two T's. There's two F, one T in every combination you could think of. As you know, as a Shiflett aficionado.
Yeah. I'm schooled in the Shiflets, but not near as much as I am now. So thank you so much for having me on and for.
Oh yeah, man.
I want to see you. You guys fucking rock, and I want to get to hang out with you sometime.
For sure. I hope we're sharing a stage together soon, buddy.
Lord have mercy on America.
All right, that was Ketch Secor from Old Crow Medicine Show. Make sure you get on over to walkingthefloor.com. I'm going to post links to everything we talked about so you can find him and find the band, find out exactly what they're doing right this second. And before I forget, because I forgot earlier, that new beautiful pedal steel music you hear under my intro, that's my good friend Adam Ditch Kurtz, pedal steel aficionado. He just put out a tribute record to Randy Travis called Storms of Steel. And if you listen close to that music, you'll understand why it's called that. So I don't even know if that's on Spotify or if that's available, or I guess just Google Adam Ditch Kurtz, because he didn't send me any info about where you can find it, but it's got to be out there somewhere. Okay, kids, I'll see you in a week or so. Hope you're having a great summer. Adios, amigos!
Pray for America. God shed your grace on